Lena had everything: a dream wedding, a loving fiancé, and a secret she couldn't wait to share. She was pregnant. This was supposed to be the happiest moment of her life. But the week before the wedding, fate had other plans. Mark, the man she loved, had betrayed her, and her best friend, her maid of honor, was part of it. She could have walked away, but why leave when she could destroy him instead? Stay with us, because this wedding is about to become the ultimate reckoning. Lena stood in front of the mirror, running her fingers lightly over the lace of her wedding dress. The soft fabric felt delicate under her touch, the intricate floral patterns embroidered with tiny pearls catching the golden glow of the room's fairy lights. It was perfect, just like she had always imagined. She took a deep breath, letting the reality sink in. In less than 1 week, she would be walking down the aisle, marrying the man she loved. The thought sent a rush of warmth through her chest, making her stomach flutter. Mark, her Mark. He wasn't just her fiancé, he was her best friend, her safe place, the man she had built her future around. They had been through so much together, and now, they were finally reaching the moment she had dreamed of for years. She could already picture it, his smile as she walked toward him, the way his hands would feel when he took hers, the promise in his eyes as he said, "I do." She smiled to herself, placing a hand over her stomach. And soon there will be 3 of us. The realization sent a wave of happiness through her. She had only found out 2 days ago, and had kept it a secret, wanting to surprise Mark in the most special way. She had imagined it so many times, maybe on their honeymoon, maybe the night after the wedding, curled up together in bed. He would laugh, pull her into his arms, press his forehead against hers, and whisper something like, "We're going to be parents." Really? His voice would be soft, amazed. He always talked about wanting kids someday. This baby was proof of their love, a new beginning for them. Everything was falling into place. A knock on the door pulled her out of her thoughts. "Lena?" Sophia's voice rang through the room before she stepped inside, her blonde hair tucked into a loose updo, wearing one of the silky robes Lena had gifted the bridal party. "Oh my God, you look stunning." Lena turned to her beaming. "You think so? Are you kidding?" Sophia walked over, touching the delicate embroidery of the dress. "Mark's going to lose his mind when he sees you." Lena let out a soft laugh, feeling her cheeks warm. "I hope so," Sophia smirked. "He should. Not every guy gets to marry someone who actually looks like a dream." Lena rolled her eyes playfully, but she couldn't hide the way her heart swelled at the thought of Mark seeing her for the first time tomorrow. Sophia flopped onto the bed. "Are you nervous?" "A little," Lena admitted, sitting beside her. "Not about marrying Mark, just, I don't know, the wedding itself, I guess. What if I trip walking down the aisle? What if I say something stupid?" Sophia waved her off. "Please, even if you do, Mark will still be obsessed with you." Lena smiled, feeling reassured. For a moment they just sat there, comfortable silence settling between them. Sophia had been her best friend for years, the one who had been by her side through everything: heartbreaks, career struggles, late-night breakdowns. She was like a sister to her, and tomorrow, she would stand beside Lena as her maid of honor. "I can't believe it's finally happening," Lena murmured, looking down at the sparkling ring on her finger. "I know," Sophia nudged her playfully. "It feels like yesterday when we were sitting in your tiny apartment, drinking wine, and laughing about how none of the guys you dated were worth your time." Lena laughed at the memory. "And now look at me, marrying the man of my dreams." Sophia nodded, but something flickered across her face, too quick for Lena to catch. Before she could think much of it, Sophia spoke again. "You really love him, don't you?" Lena didn't even hesitate. "With everything in me." And she meant it. Mark wasn't perfect, but he was hers. He had always been ambitious, always focused on his career, but she had never doubted his love for her. He was charming, successful, and confident in a way that drew people in effortlessly. Sure, he could be a little distracted sometimes, and maybe he wasn't the most emotionally expressive person, but he was driven. He had built himself from the ground up, and she admired that about him. Lena knew deep down that Mark loved her. She knew it, didn't she? A tiny, nagging thought crept into her mind, but she quickly pushed it away. Of course she did. He had proposed in the most beautiful way. A private rooftop dinner, fairy lights twinkling above them, music playing softly in the background. He had held her hands, looked into her eyes, and said all the right words. "I can't imagine my life without you. Marry me." He had made her feel special, loved, chosen. That was all that mattered. "Do you ever think about what life will be like after?" Sophia asked suddenly. Lena tilted her head. "After what?" "The wedding," Sophia said, leaning back against the pillows. "Like, once the fairy tale is over, when it's just normal life again. Do you think things will change?" Lena considered that. "I mean, probably, but in a good way, right? We'll grow together, figure things out, maybe buy a house, start a family." Her hand instinctively rested on her stomach again. A second passed before Sophia reached for her hand, squeezing it lightly. "I'm happy for you, Lena," and she sounded like she meant it. The moment passed quickly, and Sophia stood up, stretching. "All right, bride-to-be, you should get some sleep. Tomorrow's a big day." Lena nodded, standing with her. "Yeah, it really is." Sophia hugged her tightly before heading toward the door. "Sweet dreams." As the door clicked shut behind her, Lena exhaled deeply, turning back to the mirror. She stared at her reflection for a long moment, fingers brushing over the bodice of her dress. Tomorrow, she would become Mrs. Mark Spencer, and she had never felt more ready. Lena lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the city beyond the windows. Sleep wouldn't come. Her mind was too full, spinning with thoughts of tomorrow, of the vows she would say, of the life she was about to start. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, considering texting Mark, but what would she even say? "I can't sleep. Are you awake?" It felt silly. He was probably already in bed, exhausted from all the wedding preparations. She sighed, sitting up. Maybe some fresh air would help clear her head. Slipping out of bed, she grabbed her silk robe and wrapped it around herself before stepping out of the bedroom. The apartment was dark, except for the dim glow of the city lights filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. As she padded toward the balcony, she froze. Laughter. Deep, hushed laughter coming from Mark's office. Her heart skipped. Was he still awake? And was he on the phone? No. The sound was too clear. Someone was in there with him. She hesitated for only a second before stepping closer. The door wasn't fully shut, just slightly ajar, just enough for her to see the warm golden glow of the desk lamp spilling into the hallway. Mark's voice drifted out first. "Man, I still can't believe I'm actually going through with this." Lena frowned. Her fingers curled around the edge of the doorframe. Then, Eric's voice. "Mark's best friend. I thought you'd change your mind before now. What happened to all that talk about marriage being a cage?" Mark chuckled. The sound so casual, so relaxed. Lena's perfect for the role. Sweet, devoted, and best of all, completely clueless. Lena's stomach twisted. Eric laughed. "Damn, so you're really gonna lock this down?" "Of course," Mark said, and Lena could hear the smirk in his voice. "I mean, she's beautiful, smart enough to keep things interesting, but not enough to question things. A trophy wife, the kind that makes me look good." Something cold and sharp lodged itself in Lena's chest. Trophy wife? Completely clueless? Her breathing slowed, her pulse hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. Eric took a slow sip of his drink. "And she has no idea about Sophia?" Lena's entire body went cold. She stopped breathing. There was a beat of silence. Then Mark exhaled a laugh. "Please, if she ever found out, she'd break like a porcelain doll. She worships the ground I walk on." It was too easy. Lena gripped the doorframe tighter, nails digging into the wood. Eric let out a low whistle. "So how long has it been going on?" Mark swirled his whiskey, watching the ice clink against the glass. "Few months. It was just supposed to be a one-time thing. You know, some drinks, some fun. But Sophia?" He let out a dark chuckle. "Man, she's addictive." Lena bit the inside of her cheek so hard she tasted blood. Sophia, her best friend, the woman who had just hours ago sat on her bed, smiled at her, held her hand and told her she was happy for her. The betrayal sank in, heavy and suffocating, but Mark wasn't done. He leaned back in his chair, stretching as if this was just another casual conversation. "After the wedding, I'll get Lena to sign a prenup, make her think it's for us, something about financial security." He grinned. "And when I get bored, I'll move on to someone new." Eric snorted. "Damn, man, that's cold." Mark shrugged. "Marriage is just another business deal. And Lena, she's just an investment." Lena barely made it back to her room before the sobs took over. As soon as the door clicked shut behind her, her legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the floor, her back pressed against the cold wood. Her hands trembled as they covered her mouth, trying to silence the gasps escaping her throat. Her body shook violently, the weight of what she had just heard suffocating her. Mark, the man she had loved, trusted, given everything to, he had played her for a fool. And Sophia, the woman she had called her sister, her closest confidant, had been sleeping with him behind her back. Her hands shook as she gripped the porcelain sink. Trophy wife, completely clueless. She thought of every moment she had spent with him, every time she had laughed at his jokes, kissed him, held onto him like he was her safe place. Every time she had defended him when he came home late, brushed off his distance as stress, told herself that the love they shared was real. She thought about the nights Sophia had stayed over, the time she had looked Lena in the eye, and told her how lucky she was to have a man like Mark. It felt unreal, like some cruel joke that she'd wake up from at any second. But no matter how many times she begged the universe to rewind time, to take her back too before she walked past that door, nothing changed. Her stomach twisted painfully, nausea creeping up again, but this time, She forced herself to swallow it down. She couldn't afford to be weak, not now. She curled in on herself, arms wrapping protectively around her stomach. Their child, her child. A fresh wave of emotion surged through her. Anger, fear, heartbreak all tangled together in a suffocating knot. What kind of man did this? What kind of father could smile at her, kiss her, talk about their future, all while planning to betray her the moment she was legally bound to him? And Sophia, how many times had she sat across from Lena, sipping wine, laughing, telling her how excited she was for the wedding? How many times had she reassured Lena that Mark loved her, that she was lucky to have him? Had she been laughing behind her back this whole time? Had she whispered to Mark after every call, mocking her for being so naive? Lena clenched her jaw, wiping her wet cheeks with the back of her hand. She should leave, pack a bag, disappear before the sun even rises. She had enough money saved. She could buy a last-minute flight, vanish into a new city, raise her baby on her own. But then Mark's voice echoed in her mind. If she ever found out, she'd break like a porcelain doll. Porcelain doll, fragile, weak, breakable. Her entire body tensed. Her fingers dug into the silk of her robe, her breathing coming out slow and measured. No, she wouldn't break. She wouldn't run away like some scorned woman, crying in a hotel room in a city where no one knew her name. She wouldn't give Mark that victory. She would give him a wedding. She would give him the perfect, beautiful storybook ceremony he thought he was getting. And then, she would burn his entire world to the ground. Her nails pressed into her palm, hard enough to hurt. He had used her, lied to her, humiliated her. Now it was her turn. Her mind raced, working through every possibility, every move she could make. She would need help. Someone who knew Mark, someone who wasn't already in his pocket. Only one name came to mind. James, Mark's younger brother, the only one in his family who had ever truly seen her. She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around her phone as she scrolled through her contacts. She had never called him this late before, never needed to. But tonight, everything was different. Her thumb hovered over his name for a second before she forced herself to press call. The line rang once, twice, then a groggy voice answered. Lena? His tone shifted from sleepy to concerned almost instantly. What's wrong? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The lump in her throat was back, thick and suffocating, and for a moment, she thought she wouldn't be able to speak at all. James must have sensed it. Hey, he said, his voice softer now. Take a breath. Talk to me. Lena squeezed her eyes shut, pressing a hand to her forehead. Her voice, when it finally came out, was barely above a whisper. I need to see you, please. There was a brief pause. Where are you? Home. I'll be there in 10 minutes. No hesitation, no questions, just quiet certainty. Lena pulled the phone away from her ear, staring down at the screen until the call disconnected. 10 minutes. Her hand still trembled, but this time, it wasn't from grief. It was from something much colder, much sharper. She had made her decision. The cafe was nearly empty at this hour, except for a few late-night stragglers hunched over their drinks, lost in their own worlds. The air smelled of fresh coffee and something sweet, but Lena barely noticed. She sat in the corner booth, her hands wrapped tightly around a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Her leg bounced under the table. She was trying to stay calm, to breathe evenly, to keep herself together. But the moment she saw James walk through the door, everything inside her cracked just a little. He looked like he had thrown on whatever clothes he could find. Dark jeans, a plain t-shirt, a hoodie pulled over his head. His hair was slightly disheveled, and there was sleep still clinging to his face. But the second his eyes found hers, all of that faded. Lena had always thought James and Mark were nothing alike, despite being brothers. Where Mark was polished, sharp-edged, always calculated, James had a different kind of presence. Steady, calm, like a storm that hadn't decided if it wanted to rage or not. Right now he looked like he was teetering on the edge. He slid into the booth across from her, his gaze scanning her face, taking in her red-rimmed eyes, the way her fingers trembled slightly as she put her cup down. Tell me everything, he said, voice low but firm. Lena swallowed. She hadn't allowed herself to cry since locking herself in her room earlier. She had told herself that she wouldn't let another tear fall for Mark Spencer. But now, sitting across from James, someone who actually cared, who wasn't feeding her lies, something inside her wavered. She exhaled shakily, gripping the edge of the table as she forced the words out. I heard him, she whispered. Mark, talking to Eric. James's jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists on the table. Lena felt her throat tighten. He doesn't love me. He never did. I was just a trophy to him, a way to boost his image. And Sophia, she let out a bitter, shaky laugh. It's been her this whole time, my best friend. He bragged about it like it was a joke. James's expression darkened. Lena's fingers dug into her palms, nails pressing into her skin. And after the wedding, he planned to make me sign a prenup. Then when he got bored, he was going to leave me. James sucked in a sharp breath, leaning back in his seat, his fists clenching and unclenching like he was struggling to keep himself from punching something. His voice, when he finally spoke, was tight with restrained anger. "I always knew Mark was a selfish jerk," he muttered, shaking his head. "But this is something else." He exhaled slowly, trying to level his breathing. "And Sophia? Are you sure?" Lena let out a hollow laugh. "Oh, he made it pretty damn clear. Apparently she's addictive." The word felt sour in her mouth. James muttered something under his breath, something she didn't quite catch, but it sounded like a curse. He looked away for a second, running a hand through his hair, trying to process everything. Then, when his eyes met hers again, his expression softened just slightly. "What are you going to do?" he asked quietly. Lena inhaled deeply. "I thought about running, just leaving before the wedding, disappearing." James studied her. But then I thought about how he sees me," she said, her voice steadier now. "A porcelain doll, something fragile, something breakable. He thinks I'll shatter the second I find out the truth." James's jaw twitched. Lena sat up straighter, the fire inside her burning stronger now. "I'm not running, James. I'm not letting him win. I want to make him pay. I want him to feel what it's like to have his whole world collapse right in front of him." A slow dark smirk tugged at the corner of James's lips, but his eyes remained serious. "So, you want revenge?" Lena didn't hesitate. "Yes," James nodded, tapping his fingers against the table as he processed her words. He didn't try to talk her out of it. He didn't feed her some nonsense about how it wasn't worth it, how she should be the bigger person. Instead, he leaned forward, resting his arms on the table, voice low. "Then let's make it count." Lena blinked. "You're helping me?" James's expression hardened. "Of course I am. You think I'm going to let him get away with this?" He scoffed. He spent his whole life stepping on people thinking he's untouchable, but not this time. A strange mix of relief and gratitude filled Lena's chest. She hadn't realized just how badly she needed someone to believe in her, to believe that she wasn't crazy for wanting to destroy the man who had destroyed her first. James cracked his knuckles, eyes sharp with determination. "Tell me what you're thinking." Lena took a deep breath. "We let him believe nothing is wrong. I act hurt but forgiving, like a woman who loves him too much to walk away. I let him think I'm still under his spell." James nodded. "And while he's busy being a smug bastard, I'll get the evidence. Messages, photos, whatever proof I can find. We make sure there's no way he can talk his way out of it." Lena met his gaze, her heart pounding. "And then on the wedding day, we expose him in front of everyone." James leaned back slightly, a slow grin forming. "Now that sounds like a plan." Lena exhaled, her fingers finally unclenching. For the first time since hearing Mark's voice through that door, she felt something other than pain. She felt powerful. James reached for his coffee, taking a sip before setting it down with a smirk. "This is going to be fun." Lena watched him, something shifting inside her. She had always liked James, but she had never seen him like this before, focused, unwavering, standing firmly by her side. Mark had underestimated her, and that would be his greatest mistake. Lena woke up the next morning feeling different. Not lighter, not at peace, but controlled. Every part of her felt like it had been stitched together overnight, carefully pieced into something steady, something unshakable. The hurt was still there, buried deep, but she refused to let it show. Not yet. She turned in bed, staring at the empty space beside her. Mark had stayed at his bachelor party last night, or so he claimed. Before, she might have believed him without a second thought, picturing him surrounded by his friends, laughing, drinking, counting down the hours until she became his wife. Now she knew better. She took a slow breath before forcing herself up. She had a role to play. By the time Mark finally came home that afternoon, Lena was in the kitchen, carefully arranging a charcuterie board for the two of them. She could hear his footsteps as he entered, his confident stride carrying him straight toward her. "Hey, beautiful," he said, sliding an arm around her waist from behind, pressing a kiss to the side of her neck. Lena stilled for a fraction of a second before tilting her head, offering him a small smile. "Hey," she said softly, as if she had been waiting for him all day. Mark grinned, squeezing her hip. "Miss me?" Her stomach turned, but she let out a quiet laugh, leaning into him just enough to make it convincing. "Of course. Did you have fun last night?" Mark walked over to the fridge, grabbing a bottle of water. "Yeah, it was wild. Eric got so drunk I thought we were going to have to carry him home." Lena nodded, turning back to the board, carefully slicing a wedge of cheese. Her hands were steady. "Sounds like a good time." Mark twisted the cap off his bottle and took a sip, watching her. "You okay?" Lena blinked, glancing up. "What do you mean?" Mark studied her for a moment, like he was trying to read something on her face. "I don't know. You seem different." Lena's lips curled into a small smile. "I'm getting married tomorrow. Pretty sure that's enough to make any woman act a little different." Mark chuckled, walking up behind her again, his hands sliding up her arms. Cold feet? She turned in his hold, looking up at him, her expression soft, almost shy. Maybe a little. Not about you, just everything. The wedding, the guests, the attention. It's a lot. Mark relaxed instantly, his grip on her loosening as he smirked. Babe, you're going to be fine. The second you walk down that aisle, none of that other stuff is gonna matter. Lena exhaled, nodding like he had just said the exact thing she needed to hear. You're right. Mark leaned in, kissing her forehead. Always am. Lena forced herself to melt into the touch, to let her body relax against him. It was a game of control now, and she refused to lose. The days leading up to the wedding were nothing short of a carefully choreographed performance. Lena played her role flawlessly, smiling when Mark touched her, laughing at his jokes, pretending to be the love-struck fiancé she had once been. But beneath it all, her mind was sharp, focused. He bought it, at first, but Mark was sharp, and as much as he loved thinking he had Lena wrapped around his finger, he wasn't stupid. By the second day, the shift in his behavior was subtle. Longer glances when he thought she wasn't looking, his arm lingering around her waist just a second too long, his voice slightly more careful when he spoke. You're really quiet, he said suddenly. Lena glanced up, feigning confusion. Mark's eyes were on her now, his expression unreadable. You've been different these past couple of days. Lena smiled, closing the magazine. Have I? Mark tilted his head slightly, studying her. Yeah, not in a bad way, just something feels off. She let out a small, breathy laugh, shaking her head. I swear, if I hear one more thing about wedding jitters, I'm going to lose my mind. Mark smirked, reaching for her hand. Hey, I get it. It's a big deal. You're about to be Mrs. Spencer. Lena forced herself to blush, looking down at their intertwined fingers. Mark brushed a thumb over her knuckles. You're not having second thoughts, right? Lena's chest tightened, but her expression didn't falter. Instead, she squeezed his hand lightly, looking up at him with just the right amount of vulnerability. Of course not. Mark held her gaze for a second longer, as if searching for something beneath the surface. Then finally he exhaled, grinning. Good, because once you say I do, there's no backing out. Lena smiled back. If only he knew. And James was always there, just on the edges of it all, steady and unwavering. They met in secret, away from the eyes of Mark and his circle. Late-night phone calls, hushed conversations in hidden corners, exchanged glances across crowded rooms. It was strange how quickly she had come to rely on him, how his presence seemed to ground her when everything else felt like it was spinning out of control. Tonight was no different. They sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, far from the main streets, where no one would recognize them. Lena stirred her tea absent-mindedly, watching the way James's fingers tapped against the table, deep in thought. He had that look again, the one where his jaw was clenched just slightly, the one where she could tell he was holding something back. She sighed. You don't have to do this, you know. James's eyes lifted to meet hers. Do what? Help me. She set her spoon down, tilting her head. You're risking a lot by getting involved in this. Mark's your brother. James scoffed, shaking his head. Don't remind me. Lena gave him a small smile. Still, James leaned back, exhaling slowly. Lena, let's be honest here. You think I'd just sit back and watch him do this to you? She blinked, caught off guard by the intensity in his voice. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration flickering across his face. I've spent years watching Mark manipulate people, use them like they're nothing, and I hated it. But this? He gestured between them. What he did to you? It's different. Lena swallowed, feeling a strange tightness in her chest. Why? James hesitated for only a second before leaning in, voice softer now. Because you didn't deserve this. Something in the air shifted. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The world outside moved on without them. Cars passing by, distant laughter from another table, the soft hum of the coffee machines. But right here, between them, everything felt still. Lena dropped her gaze to her hands. I don't even know who I am anymore, she admitted, barely above a whisper. Everything I believed in, everything I thought was real, it was all a lie. James didn't say anything right away. Then after a pause, he reached across the table, his fingers brushing against hers. It wasn't forceful, wasn't demanding, just there, a quiet presence, offering something she wasn't sure she deserved. She looked up, her breath catching slightly. You're still you, James said, his voice steady. You're just seeing things clearly now. Lena stared at him, her heart pounding for reasons she didn't want to name. For the first time in days, she wasn't drowning. She wasn't gasping for air, struggling to keep herself from falling apart. She was just here, with him. The thought startled her. She pulled her hand back quickly, as if burned, tucking it into her lap. This isn't the time, is it? James studied her for a long moment before exhaling a quiet laugh, shaking his head. No, it's not. Lena forced a smile. ignoring the strange feeling twisting inside her. Good, because I can't afford to be distracted. James leaned back, watching her carefully. I get it. She expected him to say something else, maybe tease her, maybe push just a little, but he didn't. He just sat there, letting the silence settle, letting her be the one to move past it, and somehow that made it worse. She cleared her throat, shifting in her seat. So, what's next? James exhaled through his nose, nodding slightly as he let the moment slip away. We stick to the plan. Lena nodded, forcing herself to focus. Right, the plan, the revenge, Mark. She had to remember why she was here, why any of this was happening. But as she walked out of that cafe that night, the cold air biting against her skin, she couldn't shake the feeling that something between her and James had changed, and that scared her more than anything. The cathedral stood like a monument to perfection, bathed in soft golden light, its towering stained glass windows casting colorful reflections across the polished marble floor. The air was thick with anticipation, murmurs of admiration passing between the elegantly dressed guests. Everything was flawless, the ivory roses lining the aisle, the soft melody of the string quartet, the crisp scent of expensive cologne and fresh-cut flowers. It was exactly the kind of wedding Mark had wanted. Grand, luxurious, a spectacle. And there he stood, right at the altar, looking every bit the picture of a victorious groom. His tuxedo was perfectly tailored, his hair styled with just the right amount of effortlessness, his signature smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. He was at ease, shaking hands with a few high-profile guests in the front row, murmuring small pleasantries, knowing all eyes were on him. He looked like a man who had it all. He had no idea he was about to lose everything. Lena stood just outside the cathedral doors, hidden from view, her fingers wrapped tightly around her bouquet. Her pulse was steady, her breathing even, but beneath the surface, something electric crackled in her veins. She could hear the soft rustling of fabric as the bridesmaids adjusted their dresses. Sophia standing just a few feet away, her back turned. Lena didn't look at her, couldn't. She focused on the weight of her gown instead. The intricate lace, the delicate pearl buttons running down her spine, the soft layers of tulle trailing behind her. Every detail had been chosen carefully, designed to make this moment perfect, and it was perfect, just not in the way Mark had planned. A wedding planner peeked in, signaling that it was time. The doors were about to open, the world about to shift. Lena inhaled deeply, lifting her chin, a slow, almost unnoticeable smile forming. Let the show begin. The heavy cathedral doors swung open, and the entire room fell silent. Every guest turned, their heads swiveling toward her, eyes widening with admiration. The bride, beautiful, poised, a vision in white. Lena stepped forward, her movement slow, deliberate. Each step down the aisle measured. She could feel the weight of every gaze, could hear the hushed whispers. Mark's smirk widened as he watched her approach, his head tilting slightly in approval, like he was admiring a prize. And that's exactly what he thought she was. A prize. His prize. Lena held his gaze, her expression soft, unreadable. She let herself pretend, just for a moment, that she was still the woman he thought she was, the adoring, devoted fiancée, the woman so in love with him that she wouldn't see past his charming facade, past the empty promises, past the betrayal. She let him believe it. The priest cleared his throat, smiling warmly at the couple. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to celebrate the union of... Lena barely heard the words. Her heartbeat was steady, her mind sharp, focused on what came next. She could feel James's presence somewhere behind her, standing quietly among the groomsmen, steady, watchful, waiting. The weight of Mark's hand still rested against hers, his fingers curled possessively around her own, his thumb tracing slow, absent-minded circles on her skin. To anyone watching, it must have looked like an intimate, reassuring gesture. To Lena, it felt like a chain tightening around her wrist. She could feel the energy in the room, thick with admiration, expectation. Guests watched with soft smiles, waiting for the beautiful moment when she and Mark would exchange vows, seal their love with a kiss, step into their future together. If only they knew. She glanced at Mark, letting herself really look at him. The man she had once loved, the man who had once made her feel safe, cherished, the man she had planned to build a life with. Now, all she saw was a liar, a man so consumed by his own arrogance that he never once considered the possibility of losing. She let a small, almost imperceptible smile play on her lips. He was about to lose everything. The priest lifted his head, eyes warm, expectant. Lena, do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Lena didn't answer. Instead, she slowly lifted her free hand. The room stilled. Mark frowned slightly, shifting beside her. Lena, he murmured, just loud enough for her to hear. She turned her head, meeting his gaze. For a moment, she said nothing. just let him sit in the silence, in the heavy pulsing tension that had suddenly filled the space. Then finally she spoke. "Actually," she said, her voice calm, measured, "before I answer that, there's something I think everyone should see." Confusion flickered across Mark's face, but before he could say a word, the massive LED screen behind them flickered to life. At first there was nothing but static, a brief moment of distorted sound. Then the first image appeared. A photo, Mark, shirtless, lying in bed, his arm wrapped around a woman who was very clearly not Lena. A gasp rippled through the room. Someone in the audience muttered a quiet, shocked, "Oh my God." Mark's entire body stiffened. His grip on Lena's hand tightened, but she didn't flinch. Another photo appeared, then another, and another, each one worse than the last. Then came the messages, screenshots of texts, vivid and undeniable. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Wish I was in your bed instead. Lena has no clue. It's almost too easy." More gasps. Whispers grew louder, a wave of murmurs sweeping through the crowd, and then, the final blow, a video. Mark's voice played through the speakers, crystal clear. "Lena, please. She's just a trophy wife. Sweet, devoted, completely clueless." The room erupted. Mark's mother let out a soft, strangled noise, pressing a hand to her mouth, her face pale. His father's expression turned to pure, cold disgust. Guests whispered furiously, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats, others openly gaping at the screen. Mark stepped forward, panic flickering in his eyes. This is fake," he said quickly, his voice louder than necessary. "Someone's trying to set me up." Lena let out a soft laugh, shaking her head. "Really, Mark? That's the best you've got?" The whispers grew louder, people turning to each other, murmuring in shock and disbelief. Mark's desperation turned sharper. "Lena, listen to me." "Oh, I'm not finished." Silence. Lena let the moment stretch, let him sit in the weight of it. Then, she inhaled slowly and said the words that would shatter whatever illusion Mark had left. "Oh, and one more thing." She let her hand drop to her stomach, smoothing over the delicate lace of her gown. "I'm pregnant." A few people in the audience gasped, the news hitting the room like a sudden gust of wind. Mark's body jerked slightly, his eyes widening. You're pregnant?" Lena held his gaze. "Yes." For a split second, something flickered in Mark's expression, something unreadable. Hope, maybe, some desperate attempt to salvage what little control he had left. But then Lena smiled, and the final knife twisted. "The father," she said, her voice light, almost conversational, "is not you." Silence, not just quiet, a deep, hollow silence, as if the entire room had forgotten how to breathe. Mark's mouth parted slightly, but no sound came out. And then, movement. A chair scraping against the floor, a figure standing. James. His presence was steady, calm, and when he spoke, his voice was clear, unwavering. "Unlike you, Mark," James said, his gaze locked onto his brother's. "I will cherish her." Gasps. Mark staggered slightly, like he had just been physically struck. His face went pale, his hands curling into fists at his sides. "You're lying." Lena didn't blink. "Am I?" James took a slow step forward. "I told you once before, Mark," he murmured. "You never deserved her." Mark's breath was uneven now, his entire body tensed like he was on the verge of snapping. And Lena? She had never felt lighter. For a moment there was nothing, just silence, thick, heavy, crushing. Then all at once the tension snapped. Mark's face twisted in rage, his hands clenching at his sides. His chest heaved, his breathing ragged as his mind scrambled for control, for an escape, for something, anything, that could undo the disaster unfolding around him. His eyes flicked to the screen, still frozen on the incriminating texts, then to his mother, who was staring at him like she didn't recognize him, his father, face cold and unreadable, the guests, whispering furiously, their expressions ranging from shock to disgust, and then to James. James, standing tall and calm, shoulders squared, looking at him with nothing but quiet certainty. Something in Mark snapped. With a roar of fury he lunged. The movement was fast, reckless, his hands reaching for James like he could rip him apart with sheer force alone. But James was ready. In a single smooth motion, he sidestepped, caught Mark's wrist, and twisted. Mark let out a sharp grunt of pain as James wrenched his arm back, sending him stumbling. His knee buckled, and before he could catch himself, James delivered a swift, controlled shove to his chest. Mark went crashing to the ground. Gasps rang through the cathedral. Someone let out a muffled shriek. The sound of Mark's body hitting the polished marble floor echoed through the vast space, sharp and unforgiving. James didn't even flinch. He just stood over him, jaw tight, eyes steady. "Sit down, Mark," he said coolly. "You've embarrassed yourself enough." Mark groaned, rolling onto his side, his face burning with humiliation. He tried to push himself up, but his limbs felt weak, his pride shattered beneath the weight of the stairs boring into him. His father's voice cut through the air like a knife. Enough. Mark froze. Slowly he turned his head toward the sound. His father, always composed, always in control, was staring at him with something Mark had never seen before. Not disappointment, not anger, something worse, disgust. You've shamed this family enough, his father said, his voice low, even, dangerous. I will not allow you to carry our name after this. Mark's stomach twisted violently. Dad, you are no son of mine. The words landed like a death sentence. The room, already thick with tension, seemed to shrink around them. Mark's breath stuttered, his vision blurring at the edges. He shook his head quickly, scrambling to his feet, hands shaking. No, you don't mean that. His father's expression didn't change. Get out. Mark felt his world closing in. His father had always backed him, had always defended him, no matter what he did, no matter how ruthless his choices were. But now, he was being cast aside like he was nothing. His mother turned her face away, unable to even look at him. His business associates in the front row were already checking their phones, no doubt sending out messages, severing ties, distancing themselves from him before the scandal spread further. He felt sick. Then, movement in the corner of his eye. Sophia. She was inching toward the side aisle, her hands clutching her purse tightly, trying to slip away unnoticed. But she wasn't that lucky. A voice rang out, one of Mark's cousins, her tone sharp and accusing. Where do you think you're going? Heads turned. Attention shifted. Sophia froze, her face paling. I just need some air. Air? Another guest let out a bitter laugh. Oh, honey, you need a miracle. A ripple of cold amusement spread through the room. Lena watched as realization settled in Sophia's features. She had spent years carefully crafting her image, the sweet, trustworthy best friend. But now, all anyone saw was a liar, a homewrecker. Sophia's eyes darted to Lena, as if silently begging her to do something. But Lena just tilted her head, expression unreadable. Sophia's lips parted, as if she wanted to plead, to explain. But what could she say? That she hadn't meant to betray Lena? That she hadn't planned on sleeping with her best friend's fiancé? That it just happened? Lena didn't care for excuses, and clearly, neither did anyone else. Because before Sophia could open her mouth, another guest muttered, "Disgusting," then another. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her, thick with judgment. Sophia's breath came out shakily. She turned to Mark, like he was somehow still her lifeline, the one person who would take her side. But Mark wasn't even looking at her. He was still frozen in place, shoulders tense, face blank. Sophia swallowed hard, realization hitting her like a slap. He wasn't going to defend her. The man she had risked everything for wasn't going to risk anything for her. Mark was already thinking about himself, about survival, and she was collateral damage. Sophia let out a choked breath before quickly turning on her heel, shoving past the crowd, disappearing through the side door. No one stopped her. No one cared. And just like that, she was gone. Mark stood in the wreckage of his own making, the weight of it all finally settling onto his shoulders. The respect he had spent years cultivating, gone. His family's support, gone. His power, gone. And Lena, she was still standing tall, her veil slightly askew, her bouquet still in her hands. Mark finally forced himself to look at her, something desperate in his expression. Lena, he started, voice rough. She smiled. Not cruelly, not mockingly, just simply, like she had already moved on, like he was already forgotten. Mark felt something inside him crumble. The silence that followed was different now, not the sharp, stunned kind that had filled the cathedral moments ago when Mark's betrayal was exposed. The priest stood awkwardly at the altar, shifting slightly as he cleared his throat. His eyes flicked between Lena, still standing in her wedding gown, and Mark, who was still frozen in place, his world crumbling around him. The murmurs in the audience had died down, but the weight of 1,000 unsaid words still hung in the air. Then finally, the priest spoke. His voice was hesitant, uncertain. Do we continue with this wedding? Lena let out a soft breath, barely realizing she had been holding it. But there was still one thing left. James. She turned slightly, her gaze finding him among the groomsmen. He hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, but his presence was as steady as ever. His hands were still in his pockets, his jaw tight, his eyes locked onto hers with an expression she couldn't quite name. Then, as if making a decision in real time, he took a step forward, and then another. Lena's heart stuttered, the air between them shifting, crackling with something unspoken. James didn't stop until he was right in front of her. He looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable, like he was searching for something in her eyes. Then, he dropped to one knee. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Lena's breath caught in her throat. James reached for her hand, his grip warm, steady. "Marry me instead," he said. It wasn't a question, It wasn't even a plea. It was a promise. A declaration. Lena's fingers curled around his instinctively, her pulse hammering in her ears. She felt like the ground had tilted beneath her, like the entire world had shifted on its axis. "James," she whispered, her voice barely there. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, slow and deliberate. "I know this isn't how it was supposed to happen," he said, voice low, quiet enough that only she could hear. "And I know you probably weren't expecting this, but you deserve more than what Mark ever gave you. You deserve someone who will stand by you, someone who won't betray you, someone who will love you the way you deserve to be loved." Lena felt her throat tighten. James's hand squeezed hers gently, grounding her. "I won't hurt you like he did," he continued. "I won't lie to you. I won't use you. I will spend every single day proving to you that you are not a prize to be won, but a woman to be cherished." Lena's vision blurred slightly. She had spent so much time feeling like a fool, feeling used, discarded. She had spent nights wondering if she had ever really been loved at all. But standing here, looking down at James, the man who had been by her side through all of this, she realized something. He had always seen her, not as a trophy, not as someone to manipulate, just her. Her lips parted slightly, her heart pounding, but before she could say anything, a bitter, broken voice cut through the silence. "You have got to be kidding me, Mark." He was still standing there, disheveled and humiliated, but now his expression twisted with something else, pure rage. His laugh was sharp, humorless. "This is some kind of joke, right? You think this changes anything?" James didn't even look at him. His eyes remained locked onto Lena's, as if Mark didn't exist, as if nothing else in the room mattered. Lena felt something shift inside her. For so long, she had been looking for closure, looking for some grand moment where she would finally feel like she had won. But she didn't need it, because Mark had already lost. She squeezed James's hand back, steadying herself, and then, without hesitating, without looking back, she nodded. Yes. The cathedral erupted. Gasps, shouts, excited murmurs sweeping through the crowd. James's lips parted slightly, like he hadn't expected her to actually say it, but then his face broke into a slow, breathtaking smile. The kind of smile she had never seen on Mark, the kind of smile that meant something. He stood up, his grip still firm in hers, his presence still warm and unwavering. The priest, who had clearly never dealt with a situation like this before, cleared his throat again. Well then, shall we continue?" Lena exhaled softly, turning back toward the altar. She glanced at the aisle, the guests still gaping at her, at Mark, at James. She saw the stunned faces of Mark's parents, the judgmental stares from the business elites, the sharp gleam of 100 phones recording every second of this moment. Then she turned to James and smiled. "Yes," she said again, her voice stronger this time. "Let's continue." Mark let out a strangled sound, like he was about to say something, but his father's cold stare shut him down before he could even open his mouth. And just like that, the priest straightened his shoulders and began again. This time, when Lena said, "I do," she meant it. James slid the ring onto Lena's finger, his touch lingering, warm, steady. The weight of the moment settled between them, raw and unshakable. The priest, still looking slightly stunned, cleared his throat again. "You may now kiss the bride." Lena barely had a second to react before James cupped her face gently, his hands steady, as if this had always been meant to happen. His touch was warm, grounding, nothing like the cold, calculated way Mark had once held her. He hesitated, just for a second, like he was giving her the chance to pull away, like he wanted this to be her choice. But she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in. The moment their lips met, the world around them disappeared. The gasps, the whispers, the weight of 100 stares, all of it faded into nothing. James kissed her like a promise, like a vow that went deeper than words. And for the first time in a long time, Lena wasn't thinking about the past. She wasn't thinking about Mark, about betrayal, about pain. She was thinking about this moment, about the way James's hands held her like she was something precious, about the quiet intensity behind the way his lips moved against hers, firm but careful, deep but patient, as if he was savoring every second. When they finally pulled apart, James rested his forehead against hers, his breath warm against her skin. Lena's heart pounded, but she wasn't nervous. She was sure. A slow, knowing smile tugged at James's lips. "You're stuck with me now," he murmured. Lena let out a soft laugh, the first real, genuine laugh she had felt in what seemed like forever. "Good," she whispered. And as the room erupted into cheers, as James laced his fingers through hers and pulled her close again, Lena knew this was exactly where she was meant to be. The reception was bathed in golden light, the soft glow of fairy lights strung between the trees, casting everything in a warm, dreamlike haze. Laughter and music filled the air, blending seamlessly with the clinking of champagne glasses and the distant hum of conversation. The night was alive, full of celebration, of whispered congratulations, of stolen glances and new beginnings. And yet, standing in the shadows, just beyond the reach of the lights, Mark felt nothing but emptiness. He watched as Lena moved across the dance floor, her gown catching the light, her laughter soft, effortless. She looked radiant, glowing in a way he had never seen before. And beside her, James. His hand rested securely on Lena's waist, his touch gentle but certain, like he had always belonged there, like he always would. They swayed together, perfectly in sync, lost in a world that no longer included him. Mark's fingers curled into fists at his sides. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Lena let out a soft sigh as she rested her head against James's shoulder, the steady rhythm of their swaying making her feel weightless. She exhaled slowly, studying him, really studying him. There was something different about the way he was looking at her now, something familiar, yet entirely new. "How long?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. James raised an eyebrow. "How long what? How long have you felt this way?" James didn't hesitate. "Since the first time you laughed at one of my terrible jokes." Lena let out an amused breath. "James, you always make terrible jokes." "Exactly," he said, grinning. "And you're the only one who ever laughed at them." She rolled her eyes playfully, but she felt warmth spread through her chest. "That's not true." "Oh, it is," he said, dipping her slightly before pulling her back up. "I used to test them out on Mark first, just to see if I had a shot." Lena bit her lip to keep from smiling. "And?" James scoffed. "He'd just give me that deadpan look and say, 'Jesus, James, is this why Mom still asks if you have a real job?'" Lena laughed, the sound light and genuine. "That sounds like him." James smirked, his fingers grazing over her back in slow, lazy circles. "You want to know something else?" "What?" "You made it really hard for me to hate him." Lena arched an eyebrow. "Hate him?" James nodded, tilting his head as he studied her. "You were always so damn loyal, always defending him, always looking at him like he was the best thing in the world. It was frustrating." Lena swallowed. "Why?" "Because," James said, brushing a stray curl from her face, "I wanted to be the one you looked at like that." Her breath caught. For a moment she couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but let those words settle over her. James must have noticed, because his smirk softened into something else, something deeper, something patient. He let the silence stretch between them, as if giving her time to process what he had just admitted. And Lena? She didn't need time. She already knew. Maybe she had been blind before, but now she saw everything clearly. Lena exhaled, tilting her head up to meet his gaze. "You don't have to wish for that anymore." James stilled, and then, ever so slowly, a slow, breathtaking smile spread across his face. "Yeah," he murmured. Lena nodded, her fingers curling around the lapel of his suit. "Yeah." James let out a soft breath, his forehead pressing lightly against hers. "Guess I finally told a joke worth laughing at," he whispered. Lena laughed softly, shaking her head. "Shut up and dance, James." And as he twirled her under the glow of the fairy lights, as her laughter mixed with his, as they swayed together in a world that was finally theirs, Mark, watching from the shadows, realized something. Some betrayals shatter you, others set you free.